Good morning. Today's Shiur on Rambam Hilchis Shmiita Viyovel. Perik tests. Really, it's on a number of halachas, but mainly focus on one part. That's the avenue to everything else. And that is the famous halacha of Pruzbul, but we're going to focus more on the reason for the halacha and everything that relates to it. So the Rambam writes, Kishara Hillel Hazokin. When Hillel Hazokin saw that there is something here that's a problem, which is that people are not people are not lending money. There's a pasuk in Parashas, I think it's Rei. You will think of something. Yeah, it's Rei. Be careful if you think of that. And you'll something that is a blial, which means a bad thought. You'll say Karva Shnasa Sheva Shnasa Shmita Roy Necha Heaven. You're not going to want to lend because you're going to lose money. So they stopped holding back from lending. Hiskim Pruzbul, he made a Pruzbul so that the chayiv does not get nullified. So that people should continue to lend each other. And then he writes a caveat. It only works today. Doesn't help. Now, this is not so posh. The Ravid says, no, it's not so clear, because that's Abaya's opinion in the Gemara. But Rava says that the power, because the Gemara asks, as we're going to see, the Gemara asks, can the Chachamim come along and erase a mitzvah in the Torah? And comes along, Abaya says, yeah, talk about the Rabbanim. Shemitah the Rabbanim is manazeh. According to the opinion of Rabbi, that Shemitah is manazeh, Rabbanim, we're going to see soon, that's what the Rambam passes. And then goes on the Rava, who argues in Abaye, and he says, no, it's not the Shemitah the Rabbanim, it's Shemitah the Raisa. Now, why does it work? Because Hefker doesn't have. Bezin has a power to take out your money from you. So therefore, yes, Chachamim can come along and say, you do this, and you're not going to have to, you're going to be able to take away money from somebody else. Yeah, it's a big discussion, but the Rambam doesn't seem to hold like that. He holds it like Abaye. I got a problem with that too, as we'll see the next halacha. Halacha Yud Zayin. Following halacha. Ein Kesim Pruzbul Ela Chachamim Gedalim. Yesed. Only one who can write a Pruzbul is great people. Kibei Shammai, Kibei Zdina Shal Rab Ami Ravasi, like the Bezna of Ami Ravasi. Shein Ruyan Lavki and Mom and Bnei Adam. They are capable of taking people's money away. In other words, Hefker Bezna Hefker, it sounds like. But they didn't in case, now this can. Only they can. So that's another problem. Then comes Halacha Chavsai. And this is where the Ravid again has a problem, and everybody says this problem makes sense. And they don't have to write a Prozbul. They just say, we're not to write a Prozbul, right? Want to push it away with Dvarim. So, on one hand, you need Hefker Bezin Hefker. He say, no, I mean, Chachamim get away with less. So, derive it. Okay, now all of this is in the Gemara, as we mentioned. There's a machlokes in the Gemara about it, where it says Me can be the first thing when I tell the story that Hill was Hiskin because he saw they weren't lending and they're going to be over on this passing. And then the Gemara asks him later, me can be the Shamta trees Hiskin Hill. How can he do that? So Abai answers, Shri is Manazeh, and he brings a whole, like Rebbe who learns out that then we're going to see soon. Now, read the words of the Gemara. Zeichel Shvius, as a remembrance of Shmi. On the surface, on the simple level, Zeichel Shvius should mean they wanted to remember Shemitah. And that's the way some learn. But not Rashi, and not the Rambam. We'll see soon. So, he made a Pruzbul. Then the Gemara has a second question. If the rice and the Chachamim said, yes, I want a Zeicher. So how do we just push away a Zeicher? So simply. So Abai says, Sheval Taisa. They did it with a Sheval Taisa. In other words, they said, you're not going to do, they're okay. You can do that, as long as you're not doing an action against what the way the Torah had set up the mix. Now, where they're running, this is the Raisa. What's the Shaykhs? Okay. Called the Tkinu Rabbanan Ben. The Raisa Tkinu, they did it like the Torah. Rav have to beznet. So you could say Rav is responding to the second question. And that's the way many people learn Shat and Rambam. The Rambam knows like you have to beznet. But you have to understand why he needs it. But he puts the two together. And he holds like Rav, but only in a Drabon. Rashi says, no, and that's what Taisus says. Rashi says, no, this is going back to the original question. You asked me how you can do it. How can Hill come along and take out of the rice? I have to beznet. The answer is okay. And then later the Gemara says, like Asvina Pruzbul Beidin of the Surah Beidin of the Nadah. And then later the Gemara says, tell me the Chachamim is enough with that. It's all in the Gemara. So we mentioned Rashi and Taisus. Right, so obviously we're going to cut out a lot of the side points just to focus on the main questions. The main issues that the Rambam, and I want to address a number of issues that are. Why does he need this bezin that's ruyin lafkiyama? What is the purpose of that? A lot of explanations, but they still don't really add up to the main question. Why, if it's only in the Rabbanan, why couldn't they just say along and come along with that? Now, there's a big problem. He writes they didn't lend because they were over on the and they worried they're going to be over on the pasuk Yisham Halacha and They just said that Shemitah today is Rabbanan. So why you over Hisham Halacha and there's no ism in Atayrit of Shemitah. There's no din Shemitah in that. So they all say obviously it is, but why? And in the Rambam's this description of the lav of Hisham Halacha and we'll see even soon in the Halachas clearly. In mitzvah reish lamed aleph and minyan mitzvah shlo yimona melahalvos laoni mipnei hashmita. It's clearly a shmita. The case there's no shmita because Chachamim said you can't lend. That's shmita. That you can't collect. That's shmita. Now I want to stress an interesting point here, which we're going to discuss a little later. But in Hilchos Matnas Aniyim. Perokim Halacha Gimel, the Rambam writes, if somebody closes his eyes from giving tzedakah, in other words, a honey comes by, asks you for money, and you make believe you're davening. And then he compares that to Avodah Zarah. Yotzai Noshe B'nei Belial. And the Torah says B'nei Belial. V'nikra Rasha. And then he goes on and says all the good things that come if you do it. Now this is a Gemara Bava Basra. A Papa was solik bedarga. A Papa was going up a ladder and he almost fell. So he was worried that he was chayv skila. So he said that perhaps there was anything Shabbos. He was very upset about himself. So the Gemara says, no. Maybe a poor person came to you and you didn't give him. Because Rabbi Shua ben Karcha says, from this Gemara, as the Rambam just said. So, this passage is talking about not specifically Shemitah, it's talking about every tzedakah. But the Rambam and Hilchah Shemitah follow. Listen, because he might not be able to collect these shaman. All of our beloy says it. And then he writes another line. So now notice the difference between Hilchas Matnas and Aniyim here. Hilchas Matnas and Aniyim, he doesn't say Hanimna min lot tzedakah. He doesn't say a word about being over any Averis. Just says that it's so similar, and he stresses its connection to Avodah Zarah. He doesn't talk about it's a machshava b'chet. He says it's you prevent from giving. In Hilchas Shemitah, he says somebody who holds himself back. He doesn't say a word about Avodah Zarah here. Only speaks about the lavin, and he stresses that this is an Isra machshava. Yeah, just note it. We'll come back. Now let's go back to the beginning of the parak that we're learning now, parak test, and we're going to go to the end of the parak. Both. We just did the end of the parak, the middle of the parak. Now we're going to the beginning. First, he says, "Ein shmitas savan eges ben ateriel b'zman shayevel neig," and he learns it out from pasuk because he learned it out. And what's when zman sheyesh shmitas karka means that yoshev ha'karka l'mola v'likasem, that the karka goes back without money. And Amar Chachamim is man shat the mashmit karka at the mashmit ksaf. In other words, when you lose karka, you lose ksaf. You have to give back karka without kesef. Interesting. Halacha gimel u'medivrei seifrim. Now listen to these words. Shetehei shmitas ksafim leheges b'zman hazeh b'kol nok. Right now, before he said that shmitas karka, the shmitas ksafim would be b'chol nok and bein beres and chutz in the time when there's shmitas karka. So now he says that the seifrim shmitas has also neged b'chol. Now again, what do you mean? You just said halacha before. You told us that it depends on you said the Chachamim came along and said differently. What does he have to repeat it again? Then he says So there are a number of issues here. First of all, if I were writing this halacha, I'd write as follows: the Divrei Seifrim, Shmitas ksofim bizman hazeh, when they hang bizman hazeh, Kadesh l'nishtak t'ayir shmitim made the ksofim. The Rambam puts in a few number words. First of all, the b'chol makom. Well, why not? If there's shmitas ksofim, it should be b'chol makom. Why would we limit it? If that's the din of shmitas ksofim all the time, it should be the same thing. Second, I wouldn't put in vafishan. I just said about it before that that's the whole reason why it's for the Rabbana. And then what's the tishtakach shmitas ksofim mi Yisrael? Okay, it's not a big deal, but it's just interesting that he throws that in. Yeah. So that's another set of issues that we have to do. Now, the other thing is, as I said before, that you look at the Gemara, the Kiner Rabbanan, the Tashmei, why? Zeichel L'Shviyas. And what does the Rambam say? Where did he get that from? Now, just to note, the Tumen, Simon Samrazayin, Sifkot Nalam writes, because there's a sheet of the Malamor, the Razod, that Shmita is not noig b'zman hazeh klal. So he writes, even if that's true, we should do it, because there's an ina making a zeicher le migdash and tzivul lechot tziyene. So he clearly understands zeicher l'shviyas and zeicher l'shviyas, not shlitzishtak. One more thing. Yes, the Mishnah Hilchas Mamrim writes that ultimately the real reason for takana, and again, I'm not getting into that part, I just want to bring out one line that he writes, is so that the poor people should have should be able to live. Not about your being over Yisur. And there's a lot to say about that. There's some say a very good story. Why would you care about one mitzvah over other? We're making a Pruzbul so that you shouldn't be you shouldn't be over the lav of Halacha, but therefore you're over Shemitah. What's the balance? Okay. But then he writes in a line over there, and he says that the lav of the Bahiyah, the Varchim, the Dover, and Lavavchim, lav Yisura Legamra Hava. There's not so. That's a great word. It's a terrible thing. It's Avodah Zarah. All right. What does he mean, lav Yisura Legamra? I have to understand. Okay. So it's obvious that what he wrote in Hilchos, that the din of the lav of Yisham Halacha pen is talking about Shemitah, according to the Rambam. It's a lav in the din of Shemitah. Shemitah requires that you should not think so. Thinking like that is a Shemitah dikis, and that's why it belongs to Hilchos Shemitah. Hilchos Zanim talking about tzedakah first, which could include the halva. However, which is one of the forms of tzedakah, but there's some malam ayin with tzedakah. A guy came to me, like the story about Rav Papa. He came to him. Kol malam ayin means the guy comes to you and you make yourself not see him. In the story of Rav Papa that the Mefarshim explained, is talking a case where Rav Papa Taka didn't give somebody, and he thought he explained he held it was the right thing to do, but that's not the game. There's no lav there. It's just a remez that we learn out for a comparison to Avodah Zarah. The lav is a din of Shemitah. And it's on thought. It's thought police. It is purely thought police. You're not allowed to think certain things. And that's why it's just, that's what the Kesef Mishnah means. Lav Yisur Legamra Avav. Because it's not about not giving, it's about thinking. And that isn't the case. The case is that I'm thinking. Okay. Now having said that, I believe that the Rambam is here to tell us that this is not a Zeichel English alone. They said that this din HaTorah of Shemitah, we are continuing it into when there is no Yayin. Now, it's not a mitzvah deraisa, it's not a chiv deraisa, but the Chachamim were mamshech the din HaTorah. It's a hefza Shemitah, it's a Shem Shemitah. There's Shemitah midiraseh. We are making Shemitah without Yayin. And that's what Shemitah is talking. That's why the Rambam's lashon is Shedei Shemitah in the heavens manazeh b'chol mokim. To tell you, it is that old Shemitah. It's the same Shemitah. And that's what he writes. Aval pisha ein hayevol noyeg. To stress, we are continuing Shemitah without Yev. Oh, so now we can understand why we need a bezna roy lafkiya moment. They made a takana. You're dealing with a shmita, real shmita. So it's a real shmita. Huh? So we need a chashva bezna. And therefore you're even a Torah, because you are not lending because of shmita. Once there's a din shmita, no matter how that din shmita comes about, shmita suffer, you are not allowed to think that way. So look at din shmita. Once there's shmita, you're not allowed to think otherwise. I'm not getting into why. That's not my business. I'm saying what it says. So there's an issue shmita. Shleimanim elhalvis lani mipnei shmita, because I'm preventing because of shmita. He writes that that's the reason. But because of that, they created a din of Shemitah. And perhaps that's just, okay. Perhaps you can go a step further. and say that really, if it were only for the fact that there's a shmita here, Chacham will say, don't write anything. And without a bez. I want, just get up there and say, I am giving over my chayes. Because that's it. We took care of the problem. There's no more, they're not going to lend. Oh, but we're afraid now that you see from the Rambam that the regular person will not get it. And doesn't understand that that's enough. And therefore, without a nice bezin of writing and a bezin of ruya lafkiya, such a chosher bezin, I don't think it's the hefka is only that's the type of bezin you need. So for the regular person, in order there shouldn't be the reason we made the takon is the takach teirish shmita saksavim. That's what we're worried about. So there's two dinim. One, mitzad the din of being over, that would have been enough to say it. But so that it shouldn't be to shtakach, that you need the bezin and you need to that they should write it. And it should be in a bezin, it should be written. And that's what you see when he writes by Talmidei Chachamim, that they know Shashmitas Klavim is man azem but you don't need more than that. I mean, it's the din of the shtakach, that's what you need. So that's what was the hechrach that the Rambam had, that there's a din of the shtakach. Because otherwise, how can there be a difference in Talmidei Chacham? Where do you find dinim that a Talmid Chacham, yeah, now a regular person not? Because really it would be enough without it. But if you're worried about the shtakach, by rabbi saying it is also zeichem. When you're worried about the shtakach, then there's a difference between an amoritz or amad devar. It could be that's why he puts in the word Yisrael. Yeah, of course there are people who don't need this, but we're worried about everybody. Okay, everybody have a great day. Hatzlacha Rabba. And seid gesund und stark.